Back in 2025, Congress passed a law that was supposed to blow the lid off the Jeffrey Epstein case for good. It promised total, absolute transparency, but what it delivered instead was a global firestorm.
So let's get right into it. A law that was specifically designed to bring clarity somehow ended up creating total chaos. It exposed powerful figures, sure, but it also exposed the very victims it was supposed to protect. The big question is, how did a mission for transparency go so horribly wrong?
To really get what happened here, you have to understand the law itself. This wasn't some leak or a court order from a lawsuit. Nope, this was a direct command from the United States Congress.
At the very heart of this story is a law called the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And its goal was, well, it was simple, but it was incredibly ambitious. Force the Department of Justice to release every single unclassified record it had on Jeffrey Epstein and his whole network. And they had to do it fast, within just 30 days.
And you know, this law was super specific about what had to see the light of day. We're talking about everything. Flight logs, any secret immunity deals, even the DOJ's own internal chatter about why they did or didn't press charges. It even demanded records on Epstein's death, and, crucially, the names of any government officials mentioned anywhere in the files.
Now this is where you can see Congress trying to thread a really difficult needle. The law was crystal clear. You could not black out information just because it might cause, embarrassment or was politically sensitive. But on the other hand, it demanded that they redact victims' personal info, stuff about active investigations, and national security secrets. And this very distinction, this attempt to shield the vulnerable while exposing the powerful, well, that would become the central point of failure for this whole thing.
So, in response to that law, the Department of Justice unleashed an absolute flood of information. It was unprecedented, and it really revealed the massive scale of what they've been holding on to all this time.
And the government's response was just staggering. The release included over 3 million pages of records.
And it didn't stop there. It contained more than 180,000 images, a lot of them seized directly from Epstein's own devices.
And on top of all that, over 2,000 video files were made public. It was, without a doubt, the single largest data dump in the history of the entire case.
And, on paper, getting your hands on this mountain of data was supposed to be totally straightforward. The DOJ set up a public website where anyone could just search and download the files. The era of secrecy was supposed to be over. But, as we'll see, that promise of easy access was about to collide with a very chaotic reality.
The release of these files had an immediate, and I mean immediate, global impact. Before journalists could even begin to sift through it all, the political and reputational damage was already starting to pile up.
The fallout hit fast, especially over in Europe. In the UK, you had former cabinet minister Peter Mandelson resigning from the Labour Party just to avoid further embarrassment. And over in Slovakia, the national security advisor Miroslav Lajčák stepped down, saying he didn't want the controversy to distract his government.
And beyond the resignations, the documents just reignited all this scrutiny on several really well-known figures, people like Prince Andrew, Bill Gates, and former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Now, I have to be really clear here. Being named in these files does not imply any wrongdoing, but just the mention of their names was enough to kick off a massive new wave of media coverage and public debate.
Okay, but this is where the whole story just takes this dark, sharp turn. Because the very same release that exposed the powerful also inflicted devastating harm on the vulnerable. It really revealed transparency's double-edged sword.
So, on the one hand, the release did exactly what its supporters had hoped. Like The Guardian reported, new documents popped up with allegations that Epstein was trafficking victims to other powerful men, which was a key question that a lot of people felt investigators had kind of swept under the rug before.
But then, there's the other side of the coin, a total catastrophe that was unfolding in real time. Lawyers for Epstein's victims were calling the release an unfolding emergency. They were finding thousands of cases where the DOJ had just failed to properly black out the personal, identifying information of survivors.
And the real-world impact of these mistakes, it's just heartbreaking. Just listen to this statement from one anonymous victim whose name was exposed. She said, "I have never come forward. I am now being harassed by the media and others. This is devastating to my life. Please pull my name down immediately."
And this wasn't just one or two mistakes. The Wall Street Journal confirmed that the names of at least 43 survivors were left completely unredacted, and that number included more than 24 who were minors at the time,
along with incredibly sensitive details like their home addresses.
So naturally, after this catastrophic privacy breach, a huge fight broke out over who was to blame. Was this just an unavoidable mistake in a massive, rushed project, or was it a sign of something much more cynical going on behind the scenes?
The Department of Justice, for its part, defended its actions. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche insisted they had complied with the law, that they took great pains to protect victims, and that any time they learned about an error, they were fixing it immediately. He basically claimed it was a tiny fraction of the material.
But critics, well, they saw it in a completely different light. For example, former prosecutor Mimi Roja wrote this scathing opinion piece, arguing the DOJ was using the survivors as a shield and that its real priority was protecting powerful political figures, not actually complying with the law.
So let's just break down the core of this whole fight. On one side, you have the DOJ saying, hey, we followed the law, the errors were minimal, and our top priority was protecting victims. And on the other side, you have critics firing back saying, no way, you failed to meet the law's requirements, the redaction failures were catastrophic, and your real priority was protecting the powerful.
And all of this really leaves us grappling with a huge unresolved question that goes way beyond just this one case. It's about the very nature of justice and public disclosure. In our relentless and often righteous quest for total transparency, how do we make sure we don't end up sacrificing the innocent along the way?